Did the president or his company ever inflate assets or revenues?
Yes.
And was that done with the president's knowledge or direction?
Everything was done with the knowledge and at the direction of Mr. Trump.
Well, that was Michael Cohen in February 2019. Now, late last night, New York's Attorney General filed court documents saying she has now uncovered, quote, significant evidence of misleading and fraudulent practices, end quote, in the Trump Organization's tax filings and other financial statements. And she now wants testimony from the former president, plus Donald Trump Jr. and Ivanka Trump. The new court filing reads, quote, the Office of the Attorney General opened this investigation in March 2019 following sworn congressional testimony from Michael Cohen, the former executive vice president and special counsel at the Trump Organization, that Mr. Trump had a practice of falsely inflating and deflating the value of his assets when it served his purposes. Joining me now is Michael Cohen. He is now the host of the podcast Mea Culpa with Michael Cohen. Michael, great to see you.
Good to see you as well, Allison.
So let me pull up some of the examples that the AG, Letitia James, says she has uncovered. So here are the discrepancies just on some of the Trump properties. This Seven Springs estate in 2012 was allegedly valued at $291 million. Then 4 years later, it was only $56 million. The Trump Tower triplex was $327 million in 2016, but in other testimony, it was only $200 million. And then the 40 Wall Street building was $735 million in 2015, but a year before that, it was only $257 million. So how did this work?
The problem is I can't tell you how it worked because the only person that actually knows how it worked is Donald Trump. It's whatever he thinks that the value of the asset is. It doesn't take into consideration anything such as appraisals, or what he'll do is he'll say, well, the building across the street, despite the fact that it's brand new construction, it's not office, it could be residential, is valued at $2,000 a square foot. He'll then turn around and say, well, because I'm 1.25 million square feet in 40 Wall Street, therefore I claim it's worth $715 million. He just makes things up as it goes along.
Okay, but just so I understand, just explain to me, were you in the room as he was sort of spitballing these different figures?
Okay, so the answer is it wasn't on a particular one-off basis. What would happen is at the beginning of the year, when we would end up in conversation about upcoming, whether it would be Forbes 500 list or as a result of a journalist that was going to be doing a story about Donald Trump's net worth, we would sit there, we would take the year before personal financial statement, and Donald would say, let's say it said $5.5 billion. All of a sudden he'd say, no, it's not true. I'm worth at least 7. And then within 10 seconds thereafter, you know what? In fact, I'm worth more than 8. You know what? I'm worth 10 billion. And he would literally add $3 billion to his net worth simply in a matter of under 60 seconds. And our job, when I say ours, I'm referring to mine and Alan Weisselberg, was to go back with those documents, figure out how to increase the net worth, go back to Donald in order to show him for his approval. That's how it worked.
See, Michael, this is very interesting to me because, as you so painfully are aware, you are the person who, in the Stormy Daniels payoff, was the only person held responsible and went to prison. Is there any way in this situation that the responsibility and accountability will once again fall to you and say the Trump Organization or Donald Trump will say, Michael Cohen did all this?
Of course, because it benefited me in order to inflate his net worth. I also had absolutely nothing to do with the deflation of each asset so that he would pay less in real estate tax or less in taxes. That was done between Alan Weisselberg, Donald, as well as the accounting firm. So that argument isn't going to really work. You know, Allison, what I do want to say, though, is I don't want to see Donald Trump go to prison, or Don Jr. or Eric or Ivanka or Jared or any of them, simply because I politically disagree with virtually everything that they stand for. I want them to go to prison for the crimes that they committed. And in this specific case, Attorney General Tish James has all the evidence. She is what's called documentary evidence. She has the goods.
And can you share with us how you know that? Have you provided documentary evidence to her?
So I have provided documentary evidence going back to the House Oversight Committee, to the Attorney General's office, as well as the District Attorney's office. So I know specifically the documents that they have. On top of that, I'm not the only one. There are about close to a dozen corroborating individuals, which is so important to me, considering Donald Trump labeled me as a convicted liar, simply so that he could denigrate me and he could ruin my credibility in the event that this case goes further and he ultimately has to sit for trial.
And can you tell us what type of documents you've provided?
Yeah, I'd rather not go through those simply because I made, a promise to both the DA and the Attorney General's office that I would not disclose, documents or things that have not been already previously disclosed to the public.
Okay, so here's my question. It's been 3 years, basically, since you testified till last night in a late night filing when she made that statement that we just put up there. I have heard... Oh, so now she's trying to compel the testimony, as you know, of Don Jr. and Ivanka. So I've heard some of our analysts on the air today say that this suggests to them that she does not have the goods to file a civil lawsuit because it's been 3 years and she's looking for family testimony. So how certain are you, 1 to 10, today that a civil lawsuit is going to be filed?
I'm about as close to a 10 as you can get. First of all, the documents speak for themselves. I mean, let me just give you one specific example that has been talked about, but I think it's worth renoting. Donald Trump made allegations, for example, that his triplex apartment at 721 Fifth Avenue is 33,000 square feet multiplied by a $3,000 price per square foot, brings the value of the unit up to $100 million. In fact, despite being the builder, despite having his name on the building, what he didn't express is the fact that the unit is only 11,000 square feet. That's not something that you need Don Jr. or Eric's testimony on. In fact, I think what they're just trying to do is to be more than 100% certain by having others who could also be involved with these type of inflation and deflation of the assets, have them held responsible too.
See, Michael, what you're describing doesn't sound like a complicated math formula to crack. It sounds like somebody would know, oh, his apartment's only 11,000 square feet. And so how did he then mislead banks or lenders or insurance companies? How did that work?
Well, because few people have ever been in the apartment. And if Donald Trump says that the apartment, being that he's worth $10 billion, according to his personal financial statement, well, if you're worth $10 billion, there's probably a better than likely chance you're telling the truth that the unit is 33,000 square feet, when in fact it's not. And so that's how he would do things. Remember, the Trump Organization is a privately held company. None of this he would have been able to get away with had, of course, it be a publicly traded company, but everyone relied upon his statements, which now we all know is a very stupid thing to do because Donald Trump doesn't tell the truth.
Let me quickly read the Trump Organization statement in response to this Tish James filing. The only one misleading the public is Letitia James. She defrauded New Yorkers by basing her entire candidacy on a promise to get Donald Trump at all costs without ever having seen a shred and in violation of every conceivable ethical rule. 3 years later, she is now faced with the stark reality that she has no case. Her allegations are baseless and will be vigorously defended. Do you have a quick comment to that? Because I do want to move on to also what happened with the House Select Committee.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what did you expect them to say? To say, yes, you're right, you caught us with our pants down? They're going to say anything that they can to deflect the responsibility onto somebody else. Yes, of course, Tish James has no documents. Of course she does. She's working in concert as well with the district attorney, and I've seen the boxes. They must have more than 10 million documents.